Lonely rancher, took in bride, sold by her mother, then found her hidden baby. She showed up at a lonely rancher's door in a torn wedding dress, betrayed by her own mother, sold to a stranger, and hiding a heartbreaking secret no one knew. Just when she thought her life was over, a quiet man made a decision that would change everything. What he discovered next would lead to an emotional journey of love, loss, and an unforgettable reunion that will leave you in tears. Don't miss a second. This is a story of second chances you'll never forget. Grayson Lee lived alone on a quiet ranch far away from the city. His house was small, made of old wood, with a big front porch and wide open fields all around. Every morning he woke up before the sun, fed the horses, checked the fences, and ate his meals in silence. His only company was a loyal dog named Buddy. People in the town called him the Quiet Rancher, and he liked it that way. He had no wife, no children, and no visitors. He thought that was how life would always be, calm, quiet, and lonely. But that changed one rainy evening. Grayson was drinking coffee on his porch when he saw someone walking down the dirt road. At first, he thought it was just another traveler, but as the figure came closer, he saw it was a young girl, wet from the rain, shivering, and wearing a wedding dress. Her hair was messy, her shoes were gone, and her eyes were full of tears. She stopped at his gate and looked up at him. "Please," she whispered, "can I come in? I have nowhere else to go." Grayson stood still for a moment. Then he nodded slowly and opened the gate. The girl sat by the fire in Grayson's living room, holding a cup of hot tea with shaking hands. Her name was Madison. She was only 18. Her voice was soft, and she looked like she hadn't eaten in days. "I was supposed to get married today," she said, "but not by choice. My mother, she sold me." Grayson raised his eyebrows but didn't interrupt. "She said I was a burden," Madison continued. "So she arranged a marriage with a man twice my age. He had money. She wanted it. I didn't even know him. I begged her to stop, but she wouldn't listen. She gave me to him like I was nothing. I ran away before the wedding. I ran and ran until my feet bled. I didn't know where to go. I just kept walking." Grayson didn't say much. He wasn't a man of many words, but he brought her a blanket, some bread, and let her rest in the guest room. That night, Madison cried herself to sleep, and Grayson sat on the porch staring at the dark sky, wondering why fate had brought this girl to his lonely doorstep. The next morning, he made breakfast for two, for the first time in years. Madison stayed. She didn't ask to. Grayson didn't ask questions, but somehow it felt right. She helped with small chores, feeding the chickens, sweeping the floors. Grayson watched her from a distance. She was quiet, polite, and sad. Very sad. What Grayson didn't know was that Madison had a secret that would soon change both of their lives forever. Days passed, and the quiet ranch began to feel a little less lonely. Madison stayed, helping Grayson with small things, sweeping the porch, cleaning the kitchen, and giving Buddy the dog belly rubs he hadn't had in years. She never smiled much, but she was polite and gentle. Grayson liked that about her. He still didn't talk much, but he had started leaving 2 cups of coffee on the table every morning, one for himself and one for her. Madison tried to act normal, but Grayson could see something was still heavy on her heart. Sometimes she'd stare at the hills for hours, eyes lost in thought. Some nights, Grayson would hear her crying softly through the walls. Didn't say anything. He knew pain takes time. One evening, while Grayson was fixing a fence and Madison was collecting eggs, something strange happened. She found an old doll in the barn, covered in dust. She picked it up and held it tight, tighter than Grayson had ever seen her hold anything. Later that night, Grayson walked into the kitchen and saw Madison sitting at the table, holding the doll, tears in her eyes. He finally spoke. "That doll means something to you." Madison looked up, her eyes red. "It's not the doll," she whispered. "It's what it reminds me of." Grayson waited in silence. "I had a baby," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "A little girl. She was born just 6 weeks ago." Grayson's eyes widened, but he didn't interrupt. "My mother, she didn't want the baby. She said it would ruin the marriage deal. She told me I had no choice. After the baby was born, she took her away. I never even got to hold her for more than a few minutes." Madison wiped her tears, her hands shaking. "She didn't tell me where she took her, just said she was handled. I don't know if she gave her away or left her somewhere." Grayson felt something in his chest. It wasn't just sadness. It was anger. How could a mother do that to her own daughter? And how could anyone take a baby away like that? "Why didn't you tell me before?" he asked softly. "I was scared," Madison said. "I didn't think anyone would care." Grayson stood quietly, then pulled out a chair and sat beside her. "I care," he said simply. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Grayson looked her in the eyes. "We'll find her," he said, "no matter where she is." Madison blinked, surprised. No one had ever said something like that to her before, not even her real family. Something changed in that moment. Madison wasn't alone anymore, and Grayson wasn't just a quiet rancher with a dog and a fence. He was now a man with a mission, to find a lost baby and bring her home. The very next morning, Grayson woke up early, earlier than usual. He saddled his horse, packed a small bag, and told Madison he would be back by night. He didn't explain much, just gave her a nod and rode off toward town. Madison stood on the porch, watching him disappear into the hills. Her heart beat fast. For the first time, someone was trying to help her. Not for money, not out of duty, but just because they cared. Grayson didn't like town much. He rarely visited unless he needed supplies. But today he went to the places where rumors lived. The barber shop, the bakery, even the old woman who sold eggs by the road. Quietly, he asked around, "Any baby girls dropped off recently? Know any orphanages nearby? Anyone seen something strange? A woman with a baby? Maybe too young to be her own?" Most people shrugged or gave short answers. But finally, in a small grocery store at the edge of town, an old man behind the counter paused. "You said baby girl left. Somewhere?" the man asked. Grayson nodded. "There's a place 2 towns over. Small orphanage run by a church lady. She told me last week that someone left a baby at their doorstep. No name, just a pink ribbon tied around her wrist." Grayson leaned forward. "What did she look like?" "Couldn't say," the man said. "Just that the baby didn't cry much. Quiet little thing." Grayson thanked him and rode fast. Dust flew behind his horse as he traveled the long road to the town mentioned. The sun was high and his back ached, but he didn't stop. By evening he reached the orphanage, a small, white house with a wooden cross on the roof and flower pots on the windows. A kind woman with glasses opened the door. "I'm looking for a baby," Grayson said. "A little girl left here maybe a week or 2 ago." The woman gave him a careful look, then stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, children played with toys. Some laughed, some napped. She led Grayson to a small crib in the corner. There, sleeping peacefully, was a baby girl with big blue eyes and soft brown hair. There was no name, the woman said. Only this. She handed Grayson a ribbon. On it, written in neat handwriting, was one word: hope. Grayson's heart felt heavy and light at the same time. The baby looked just like Madison. The same soft lips, the same tiny ears. He didn't need proof. He knew. He asked to take a picture and promised he'd return soon with the mother. Back at the ranch, Madison was pacing the porch. The moment Grayson arrived, she ran to him. He didn't say anything at first, just handed her the picture. Madison gasped. Her hands shook. That's her! That's my baby!" Tears poured down her face. And in that moment, Grayson knew the hardest part was over. But the most beautiful part was just beginning. The next morning, Madison wore a clean dress and brushed her hair neatly. Her hands were shaking, her heart racing, but her eyes were full of something new: hope. Grayson saddled up the horse and helped her onto the wagon. Buddy the dog jumped in too. The ride was long and quiet, but Madison didn't say a word. Her thoughts were too busy dancing between fear and joy. They reached the town. Madison looked around nervously. She hadn't been outside the ranch in weeks. People stared at her, whispered behind her back, but she kept her eyes forward. Nothing else mattered. She was going to see her baby again. The orphanage was small and peaceful, with children playing outside under the sun. Madison could barely step out of the wagon. Her legs were weak. Grayson placed a hand on her shoulder and gave a soft nod. Inside, the kind woman who ran the orphanage greeted them. "She's right here," the woman said with a warm smile, pointing toward a crib. Madison slowly walked forward, step by step, and then she saw her, the little baby girl with soft brown hair and blue eyes, lying on her back, looking up at the ceiling, moving her small fingers. Madison dropped to her knees. "My baby," she whispered. tears pouring down her cheeks. "It's really you." The baby turned her head and looked at her. For a moment nothing moved. Not the air, not time, not even Madison's breath. Then the baby reached out with her tiny hand and smiled. Madison broke down, hugging her daughter gently as if afraid she would disappear. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't leave you. I never wanted to. I love you so much." Grayson stood behind them quietly, watching. His throat tightened, and he looked away for a moment to hide the emotion in his eyes. The woman from the orphanage gave Madison time. Then she said gently, "We'll need to do some paperwork, but since you're her real mother and this man is a witness, it won't be too hard." Grayson stepped forward. "She belongs with her mother," he said firmly. The woman smiled. "I agree." After signing the papers, Madison carried the baby out in her arms. The sun was warm, the birds were singing, and for the first time in her life, Madison felt safe. On the ride back, the baby slept in her lap, while Madison kept looking at her again and again, like she still couldn't believe it. "She has a name," Madison said. Softly, "Hope. That's what I wanted to name her." Grayson nodded. "That fits her." Back at the ranch, Madison laid Hope in the guest room, wrapped her in a soft blanket, and kissed her forehead. Later that evening, as the stars came out, Grayson sat on the porch sipping coffee. Madison joined him, Hope in her arms, and for the first time ever, there was laughter on the ranch. Real, warm, joyful laughter. Life on the ranch changed completely after baby Hope arrived. Madison woke up early each morning, not because of chores, but because Hope would giggle and wave her little hands, ready to play. Her small sounds filled the once quiet house with joy. Grayson, who used to eat breakfast alone in silence, now sat at the table while Madison fed Hope in her lap, both of them laughing over the baby's funny expressions. Grayson never imagined he'd live in a house with a baby again, but somehow it didn't feel strange. It felt right. Madison had grown stronger too. The scared girl who once stood barefoot at Grayson's gate was now a young mother, confident, kind, and full of love. She no longer looked at the hills with sadness. She looked at her baby and saw a future. One afternoon, Grayson returned from the field with a surprise. He had built a wooden cradle by hand, carved with flowers and stars. "She should have something that's just hers," he said, setting it gently near the fireplace. Madison's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you for everything." Grayson shrugged. "I didn't do much." "Yes, you did," Madison said, placing her hand over his. "You gave me a second chance, and you gave her a life." News spread in the nearby town. People were curious, some judged, some gossiped, but others came to visit. They brought clothes, baby toys, and food. A few even asked Grayson if he planned to adopt Madison and Hope. Grayson didn't answer. He didn't care about titles or papers, but he knew something had changed inside him. The ranch no longer felt like it belonged to one lonely man. It was now a place of healing, laughter, and love. One evening, as the sky turned orange and gold, Madison stood on the porch rocking Hope in her arms. Grayson stepped beside her. "Do you think she'll be okay growing up here?" she asked. Grayson nodded. "She has you. That's more than enough." "And what about you?" Madison asked, smiling softly. "You're not lonely anymore, are you?" Grayson looked at the baby, now fast asleep, then at Madison. "No," he said, "not anymore." Months passed. Seasons changed. Hope took her first steps on the soft ranch grass, with Madison clapping nearby and Buddy barking in joy. Grayson carved her name into a wooden board that hung proudly on the front porch. Hope Ranch. It was no longer just a name. It was a story of a girl sold by her own mother, a baby taken away too soon, and a rancher who thought he had nothing left to give, until love walked in through the rain and stayed forever. Sometimes, the people we least expect become the family we truly need. Love and kindness can heal deep wounds, and even a small act of compassion can change a life forever. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe for more heart-touching tales. What would you do if you were the rancher? Tell us in the comments below.